As the planet's glaciers and ice sheets melt, they reveal untold stories of human skills, adventure, faith, and deadly conflict. About 5,000 years ago, a tattooed man in his 40s, with brown eyes and black hair, climbed a steep mountain in the Ötztal Alps, on the border between Austria and Italy, and reached 3,000 meters in height. The climber was wearing a fur coat and shoes made of bear leather and seemed to be in a hurry. Although he was genetically predisposed to being obese, his active lifestyle kept him in good shape. Although he had some health problems, stomach upsets, knee pain, that didn't stop him. Nor did its extraordinary amount of equipment, with some parts incomplete, as if it had been packed in a hurry, arrows and unfinished carved bows, a precious copper axe, medicinal mushrooms and even 2 portable stoves. The man was about to cross the highest part of that region, perhaps seeking safety on the other side, when an arrow struck him in the shoulder. He cut his artery and ended up killing him. Snow and ice covered his body and belongings. And it remained there, undetected, for several thousand years. Elsewhere in the Alps, other bodies and belongings have remained frozen for centuries or even millennia. But a couple of decades ago, bodies and objects buried in the ice began to emerge. The reduction of glacier surface to a scale never seen before has revealed the mysterious and sometimes eerie remains that have created a new field in science, glacier archaeology, which is nothing more than the study of past finds in melting glaciers. And these findings present a surprisingly detailed and long timeline of the adventures, innovations, and dangers of humans in the high mountains. There have always been individual cases of bodies or objects emerging from the ice. The glaciers have swallowed people and objects and, at some point, spit them out again. There's even a German word for the process by which objects emerge from glaciers, ausgeppert, when something is exposed as snow or ice melts. However, with climate change accelerating, high temperatures have melted glaciers to record levels, leading to an unprecedented range of archaeological finds, sometimes stripping thousands of years of history in one fell swoop. The discoveries have highlighted human ingenuity in crossing the Alps, whether for trade, flight, hunting, cattle breeding or even the conquest of other territories. Those findings include notable technical innovations such as the oldest known snowshoe, dating to about 6,000 years ago, as well as evidence of very ancient spiritual practices. The Romans, nervous about possible landslides and avalanches, sacrificed coins in honor of the gods of the mountains before making the dangerous crossings through the Alps, once they had expanded their empire throughout Europe. In the 17th century, a woman who was no more than 20 years old, dressed as a man and wearing disparate shoes, tried to cross a glacier in Switzerland. The woman died, or fell from the glacier, and, like the man fleeing some 5,000 years before her, was buried by ice and snow, until her body emerged in the late 1980s. Revealing the secrets of the mummy. Perhaps surprisingly, the discoveries also reveal that man's routes through the Alps haven't changed much in the last few millennia. In 2003, with a season of quite high temperatures, the hidden history of the Schneidjoch Pass in Switzerland was discovered. What this place has given us is a continuous line of objects found there that go from 4800 BC, through the Middle Ages and up to the present day. When that passage was open, humans have crossed it and lost things there. Or they have died and left their belongings behind. Only after the advent of roads, trains and tunnels did these crossings cease to have the importance they had in the past. Of course, the most well-known and studied find has been the 5,000-year-old murdered man mentioned earlier in this article, who is known as Ötzi, because he was found in the Ötztal Alps. Preserved by ice, it was found in 1991, in the early years of the heavy melting of the glaciers. Before Ötzi's discovery, archaeologists generally assumed that humans didn't pass through that part of the Alps in those years, because the terrain was so difficult. But Ötzi taught us that humans passed through there, and that started the research that has led us to find hundreds of objects full of history. Now, decades of research into Ötzi and his belongings have brought an entire universe back to life. Scientists have discovered what kind of animals and plants they grew and hunted. They have been able to trace their ancestors from Anatolia, present-day Turkey, to Europe and have mapped the network of peasants and fur traders operating at the time. He lived at a time when many lived in villages near the valley and had farms, but others were nomads looking for animals to hunt. In front of a display case showing the bearskin hat that Otzi wore, Evelyn Egger, an archaeologist at the museum, explains that the institution has space to accommodate the new discoveries. Scientists continue to make new discoveries, Egger says of the findings they've made about Otzi regarding his genetic predisposition to obesity, diabetes and baldness, partly offset by his healthy lifestyle. An analysis of pollen moss fragments found in their digestive system and also in their clothes and equipment has allowed the researchers to reconstruct their final journey, because the plants grow at different altitudes and in different parts of the mountain. During his final 33 hours, Otzi walked north from the top, very close to a line of trees, at about 2,300 meters, then he returned to the forest through a gorge and climbed back up to more than 3,000 meters. The complicated journey may be related to the cause of his death, another researcher suggests. Days earlier, he had suffered a wound from a sharp weapon in his right hand and, shortly before he died, he received an arrow in his back. His lavish equipment suggests that perhaps he was some kind of leader, who might have been embroiled in a power struggle. The copper axe, for example, was made from metal imported from Tuscany, suggesting, according to several finds in the region, that the tool was a status symbol. Walking past Otzi's clothes and belongings, which are arranged in drawers arranged around the museum, Egger looks at his coat, made from scraps of goat and sheepskin. It's warm and long. It is also very well made. It is not only functional, but beautiful. In addition, his bearskin hat and clothes were expertly made. For his part, Putzer points to the sophisticated design of Otzi's shoes. The footwear I had was really designed for the high mountains, it was strong, made with bear skin and full of hay so that the feet would stay warm. The instep part was made of deer skin. This type of sturdy footwear was very different from the lighter footwear used by communities in the lowlands of the region. The shoes of those territories were basically sandals. Only tourists wear sandals like these when they are in the mountains. What's striking is that other alpine equipment like snowshoes and sleds have remained unchanged for years for one reason only: they work. Even at that time, if you wanted to cross the Alps you had to be well prepared, Putzer says. In the Museum of Bolzano you can also see the oldest snowshoe that has been found so far, also discovered on the border of Italy and Austria. The design is very similar to the specialized snow boots currently in use. For Reitmayer, the finds made in other sectors of the Alps, such as tools and weapons, show a sophistication and a clear notion of what it takes to cross the mountains. They used the right wood for every purpose, and always the best materials. Now you would call it high-tech design. The fearful Romans. The findings in the glaciers are special because they are so well preserved, Reitmayer said. And also because these objects ended up in the high mountains, because surely a mission or a trip was being carried out far from the ordinary life of the villas. It is not a tomb, where the contents reflect a funeral site. Instead, Otzi gives us insight into his everyday life, what he did on a day-to-day basis. It's like a time capsule, very different from other archaeological sources. The objects are things that we are never going to find in the valley, because there they are going to rot, like things that are made of wood, leather and fur. While many of these objects belong to people who spent much of their lives in the Alps, others saw the mountain as an obstacle to be crossed as quickly as possible. For example, the Romans. The Romans described the landscape of the Alps as terrifying, although they also praised the Alpine cheese and wrote that it was delicious. The Romans only crossed the Alps for trade and for their military campaigns across Europe. Vestiges of military settlement construction have been found at an altitude of about 2,000 meters, not on a glacier, but in a place high enough to have a strategic view of the terrain. The Romans were not very fanatical about mountains. They quickly created a network of roads through several junctions. There are vestiges of way stations in the mountains, where horses changed. The woman with the mismatched shoes. It is not only the most remote past that offers mysteries. One of the most puzzling glacier finds isn't that old compared to the others: the young woman with the mismatched shoes and a man's coat, found on the Porchabella Glacier in Switzerland, who is estimated to have died around 1685. He had lice in his hair and carried a comb to try to eliminate them. Despite the vivid details of his team, his identity remains unknown. We don't know if she was alone or with other people. We don't know why he was there. It was quite well equipped, and I'm sure he knew he was going to the high mountains. He noted that Europe was devastated and impoverished by the recent 30 Years' War at the time, and the woman may have been migrating as a result, perhaps with a group of people. But again, that's just speculation, warns the academic. Ötzi can continue to reveal more secrets as the investigation into his body and belongings progresses. The man's body is displayed discreetly behind a small window in a dark side room, so that museum visitors can decide if they want to see it. Should any technical problems arise at the museum, there are 2 other cold storage cells ready for it in the city at all times, one of them in the main hospital in Bolzano, Egger revealed. Meanwhile, the ice that once exposed him has continued to thaw. I first visited the place where it was found in 1993, and when you go up there today you see how much the glacier has shrunk. It doesn't take generations to document it, one lifetime is enough to see change. As valuable as these findings are, archaeologists warn that, in general, the disappearance of glaciers is bad news, not only for the environment but also for our understanding of history. Without ice, artifacts disintegrate quickly. It's like you leave the freezer open and at some point, the frozen meat rots and eventually disappears. So we really need to appeal to the public, to those who hike in the Alps, to let us know if they see a possible find, because these areas are huge and we can't control them all. He fears that glacial archaeology will turn out to be a very short-lived field. Once the ice disappears, we will no longer have that archive in the glaciers. In the meantime, every discovery matters. We need to salvage as much as we can and explain to people that even the tiniest object can tell a gripping story. That's the most important message to convey. Even if it looks like a small object and not so old, it can actually be really exciting.